Welcome to the first of hopefully many episodes of Uncomfortable Conversations with the Black Man. In the midst of all this chaos in our world, so many of y'all have reached out to me, and by y'all, I mean white people, have reached out to me asking, how can I help? How can I join in? How can I stand with you? So I've created this for you. Because in order to stand with us and people that look like me, you have to be educated on issues that pertain to me and fully educated so that you can feel the full level of pain, so that you can have full understanding. I fervently believe that if the white person is your problem, only the white person can be your solution. And so this is made for you, my white brothers and sisters, to increase your level of understanding so that you can increase your level of compassion and lead ultimately to change. So consider this a safe space to answer so many questions that I've seen from y'all. The first question I've seen a lot of, Emmanuel, why are y'all rioting? I understand protesting, but why riot? And to that I submit this. MLK said that rioting is the language of the unheard. For years, Black people have tried peacefully protesting, going back to 1965 and before with the Selma March, and that didn't work. And then in 2016, Colin Kaepernick, he took a knee, and that agenda got moved to a flag, which was never the goal. He just wanted to raise awareness on social injustice. So that didn't work. And so now we've seen riots because Black people and hurt people are trying to get the attention of the oppressor. They're trying to raise awareness of the oppression. I was biking around Lake Austin the other day, and there was a white girl about 15 meters ahead of me. And as I'm on my bike, I say to her, on your left, because I want to notify her I'm coming so that she can change her course of action. I get 10 meters away and I increase my voice, on your left, because she had yet to move. I get 5 meters away and she's still there, and I say, on your left, because I realize if she doesn't change her course of action, there will be a collision. And as I approach her, I yell, on your left, and we collide. My goal was never to hit her, but because she had her headphones in, she didn't hear me, and so she didn't change her course of action. I believe that that's the same thing Black people are doing now. 1960s, we're yelling, we're oppressed, but the course of action wasn't changed. And so we again yell, we're oppressed, but the course of action wasn't changed. And so again we yell, we're oppressed. And now you see the collision that's occurred in America. So while I don't condone rioting, and I'm sure you don't either, because for the most part, Black people and others that are looting and rioting destructively, they're burning down their own homes. But when you think about the 5 different stages of grief, you come up to one stage, which is called anger. And sometimes emotions, they don't know their actions. I remember my mom, when I was a child, she lost her sister, and I just remember her yelling and screaming. And I come outside my room and I see my mom throwing herself into a wall, and I'm wondering what happened. And my dad tells me that my mom's sister had died. Thinking back on that, throwing yourself into a wall, it's not going to change anything. You're actually harming yourself. But sometimes pain and hurt, it doesn't know how to express itself. You know, another question I get from my white friends, they ask me, why do you think white privilege exists? And I say this, if you and I were in a race and the official at the start line, they held me back for the first 200 meters, and you had a 200 meter then head start, the only way to level out that race is to either stop you from running or put me on a golf cart and catch you up and catch myself up. Well, you see, what we've done in America is we've simply said, okay, Emmanuel, you're now free to run. And we've acted as if it's a fair race, when in all honesty, Black people were held back for hundreds of years. And so if in the late 1960s we say, okay, Black people, you can go now, that's not a fair race. LBJ, he said it best when he said, you can't shackle and chain someone for hundreds of years, liberate them to freely compete with the rest, and still justly believe that you've been fair. So white privilege it's having a head start due to hundreds and hundreds of years of systematic and systemic racism. It's having a head start intrinsically built into your life. It's not saying your life hasn't been hard, but what it's saying is your skin color hasn't contributed to the difficulty in your life. I live in an affluent neighborhood in Austin, Texas, and if I ever go to my mailbox and I see a white woman walking up to the mailbox, I consciously sit in my car because I don't want her to feel like I'm a threat. If I'm on an elevator with a white person, I try to hit the button first and get off the elevator first because I don't want them to perceive me as a threat, because I realize at any point in time, whiteness can be weaponized. We saw that this past week. Amy Cooper, Central Park, the woman who called the cops on a black man who wanted her to leash her dog because it was illegal to walk your dog without a leash. And she used two words that are a death sentence for black people. When she called the cops, she said, "There's a black man who's threatening my life." Both of those things, as far as when you compile them together, were a lie. Because that black man, he was a bird watcher. And while so many people saw that incident and they were heartbroken, I, as a black man, saw that incident and was reminded of 1955. Emmett Till, 14-year-old boy who was lynched, mutilated, and killed by two white men because a white woman made a false claim saying that he flirted with her. In 2017, that white woman recanted that story. In 1956, the two white men that killed him, they got off. And they admitted that they did it because they knew they couldn't be charged again due to double jeopardy. That, to me, is white privilege. The ability to weaponize your whiteness and the ability to live life unconsciously. Because I, as a black man, have to calculate every move I make the second I walk outside my house. Another question I get that I'm sure several of y'all have thought, if not your kids have, how come black people can say the N-word, but we can't? I had to do some research on that to educate myself a little bit further. The N-word is synonymous with oppression, execution, and subordination. Black people were so long treated and viewed as no more than the slave to a master. We were viewed as dirt, and that word is synonymous with that. So there is a visceral reaction whenever we hear that word coming out of someone whose complexion is white that reminds us of the pain of our ancestors. Black people took something that was meant and originally used as evil, and we turned it into a term of endearment. So white people, I submit that you can't, shouldn't, and nor should you ever have a desire to say that word, whether quoting a rap song, a movie, or anything. Because remember, that word is truly synonymous with hatred. The abolitionist Frederick Douglass, he wrote when talking about his master that reading and learning would spoil an N-word. Because remember, black people were nothing more than a slave to their master. And when you think about, well, then why are black people saying it? And if I can't say it, then you shouldn't either, black person. We've been oppressed for so long, our rights have for so long been limited, that for you to now try to again limit our speech, it's painful. So that's why, in a nutshell, in a few minutes and seconds, why you can't say the N-word. And another question I've gotten so often, how come black people care more about white on black crime than black on black crime? It's not that we don't care about black on black crime, but let me propose this. When a black person commits a crime, they go to jail. When a white person commits a crime, they get off, and hopefully they even get arrested. Ahmaud Arbery, the black man that was chased and gunned down by two white men in Georgia, it took us 2 months to arrest those perpetrators. And the only reason we did? Because we saw the video. Imagine if camera phones didn't exist. Black on black crime is an issue, but if you do the research, high violent crimes are all interracial. Blacks kill blacks, whites kill whites, Hispanics kill Hispanics. So it's not that we don't care, but it's the same issue as why y'all saying Black Lives Matter when all lives matter. We understand all lives matter, but right now, black people are dying at the hands of white people, and I can't change that. Only you, my white friends, y'all can change that. So if you want to know, how can you help? How can you stand with us? How can you stand with me? You must first educate yourself so you know exactly what you're standing for and why you're standing. Because the only way we can solve this issue is through exposure, through education, through compassion, and through empathy. Thank y'all for tuning in to the first of hopefully many episodes of Uncomfortable Conversations with the Black Man. Consider this a safe space to educate yourself and help me help you by leaving your questions and sharing this video. Because while you might think you're not ignorant, someone you know and someone you love, they may be.
Welcome to another episode of Generation Shock, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone is having a great day. In today's episode, we're going to be refraining from introducing ourselves because it's not about us. It's about the countless Americans who have lost their lives in tragedy due to unthinkable acts of violence against them based solely on the differences of their skin. We will do our best to honor those lives lost by continuing our conversation in our own way. As we may not be able to speak on every life lost, I will personally start by dedicating this show today to Breonna Taylor, a young EMT who tragically lost her life on March 13th when police broke down the door to her apartment in an attempted drug sting and shot her 8 times. She would have turned 27 on June 5th. The officers involved have yet to be charged.
I would like to dedicate this video to Trayvon Benjamin Martin, who tragically lost his life at the hands of George Zimmerman, a white neighborhood watch captain in the city of Sanford, Florida, on February 26, 2012. 2 weeks after his birthday, he would have been 25 years old today.
And I would like to dedicate this video to Laquan McDonald. In 2014, this 17-year-old kid got killed in Chicago, tragically killed in Chicago. And the cop, they try to cover it up, and they try to say that Laquan was actually charging them with a knife. And then the video surfaced, the dash cam video surfaced that showed up saying that, the officers, he was not charging at them, and the officers shot him 16 times. And I dedicate that video to this show to him.
And I would like to dedicate this show to George Floyd. Unfortunately, his story doesn't need to be told because we're all living it right now. And I just want to start this off a little bit by explaining a little bit about the video that everybody just watched for our intro, a little bit of the meaning of it, the background, where it came from, and what it means to all of us. And so obviously, out of all of us here, I'm the one who probably least understands what's going on sometimes in America with all these tragedies and injustice. There's somebody who I admire and I look up to. She is a young African-American woman, somebody who means a lot to me. She's helped mentor me and do a lot for me. And she had put a post that she was tired of the way this country's going and things of that nature. And she was prepared to start to cut certain people out of her life because of the injustice going on. And if you're not part of the problem, basically kind of you're part of the solution. So I decided I want to reach out to her and try to educate myself, at least, as to have a better understanding, because she was somebody who I could trust, that I could speak openly with and maybe talk to. And because I've had a lot of candid conversations with her, she's helped me make decisions in my life that changed everything. She was a guiding factor in one of the decisions for me to move back up to the Northeast. And she sent me that video, and it gave me the opportunity to watch something, understand. And after she sent it, she reached back down and said, look, this isn't going to answer everything. This isn't going to solve everything, but it's a start. And I think he can articulate it better than I can for you. And I want you to know that you always have an open platform anytime to speak to me about any questions you have, and there will be zero judgment, which I think is one of the most important things that we all need right now, no matter what our race is to have an open platform and an open dialogue to the things going on. So I want to start off with you, Goldo, and give you an opportunity to talk about what that video meant for you, or what takeaways maybe you had from that video.
Yes, that video is a very powerful and impactful video. It does explain the two sides of the same coin. Also, where like the N word is portrayed, like blacks say it and white can't say it. Stuff like that does make a powerful statement, because even though we've been oppressed for so many years, for so many centuries, it's like we still keep calling each other that. I believe it's time we stop using what we were called back in the days and start calling ourselves human, because that's what we are. We're not niggas, because that's what they named us. And that's not what we are. That's what my takeaway on that video was.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was a very powerful video. He made a lot of great points. I wish that video would have been out way before any of this would have happened. But the fact is, in order to understand it, and it's funny because, like, I actually had this debate. I was in high school. I used to take a civics class with my teacher, Mr. Wesleyan. And he'll sit there one day. I remember this clearly, and that video remind me of that. I remember this very clearly. We were sitting down, and we enter the class. He went, usually, teacher comes in, the students just be quiet and listens to the teacher, and the teacher, talks about what the day is gonna be and all that. But that day, he decided to just come in and sit down and don't say anything, and he's listening to us talk to each other. And mind you, the majority of I grew up in Lawrence, Massachusetts. Born in Boston, grew up in Lawrence, Massachusetts. That day. Oh, and the city I live, Lawrence, Mass, is predominantly Latinos and blacks. So, like, we're over here talking to each other, and we're like, yo, what's up, nigga? This, what's up, nigga? That, what's up, nigga? This, and we're talking. Now we're only talking between Latinos, and then we also have some of our African American friends, and we're talking to them. And he's sitting there observing the conversation, and he's noticing that nobody's reacting to it or being offended by it. So he stops and he stands up and he starts saying, he's like, today the class is gonna be about that word, and we're like, what word? The N word, and what does it mean? And why are certain people allowed to say it and I'm not? Oh, and other people are not. And he goes, I'll give you an example. Right now, I sat down, I came in, and everybody's talking to each other, and I'm hearing it, and you guys are just saying it like if it's just a natural language, like a natural thing to say. Natural. And you're like, yeah, because, we grew up in the same neighborhood. We all know each other. So we know we're not meaning it in any demeaning way. We're not meaning it in any way to insult each other. It's actually, like he said in the video, it's in a term of endearment at that moment. The word got flipped. Mind you, there's a lot of things that goes into that, hip hop and all that. And all that you get, that's what we grew up listening to. But he said, he looked at African American, his one of our boys, and he was like, what if I say it? And he immediately said, my boy was like, I'll get up and punch you in the mouth. And he goes, so that's exactly what I mean. Why do you guys can say it, and when I say it, you get upset and you threaten me to punch me in the mouth? And then it was actually a great debate. It was a great debate. It was an eye-opening experience. I was like, man, this is pretty cool. Actually, from that day forward, I fell in love with the class, and it was basically a civics class, and our teacher was Mr. Wesley, and I think I mentioned his name already. But he was that type of like teacher that would get the debate going, and that class was all about debating, and debate this, debate that, to pick a topic with debate on it, and I just found that very interesting. And it's just sad that we're at a time where in social injustice, and actually injustice in the courts is still happening, and and this is before my generation.
Yeah,
and later on, I'll talk about I'll talk about Rodney King, and that was 91. So, and then L.A. just hell broke loose in L.A. And that was in 91, and now this happens to George Floyd, and we just mentioned some people, and it keeps going. And that's the crazy shit about it, and it's kind of it's kind of fucked up. So
yeah, I think
let's see, man. Hopefully this makes a good movement. We move forward from this.
Yeah, I definitely think that. I mean, like you just said, it keeps happening. So we get to that point of where when is it gonna stop? When are these incidents are gonna stop? I mean, listening to the video, watching that video. Definitely gave me a different perspective, though I still don't agree with the violence and the looting. It gave me a perspective to think how people react. I think something well said. If someone dies that you're very close to, you feel sadness and you feel anger. You want to hit something, you want to scream, you want to shout. And I think we need to understand that perspective. From the people that are doing it. They're angry, they're mad. Why does this keep happening? We talk about, this goes back all the way to slavery, to race, and racism all through the years, and we're still and we're in 2020, and these things continue to happen. Like you said, injustices in the court, police brutality. At what point are we as a country, as every American, gonna put a stop to it, gonna put notice to it, Are we going to reform things in the police departments and the courts? How do we get to a solution? It shouldn't be that, every month, who's the topic of the month?
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't be that way. And unfortunately it is. I mean, just because you have a badge, and don't get me wrong, I respect the badge. I respect our military. I have friends and family who are in both.
Me too. Yep.
But, I think I read a great quote saying, if you have 100 bad cops, you have 100 good cops, and one is bad out of those 100, but those 99 don't stop that one, then they're all bad. And I think we need to get to the point where we're standing for what is right. And I enjoy these protests. I believe in them. I'm inspired by them. I give these people that are out there marching, walking, holding up signs, standing their ground. I applaud them, because you know what, it's time for a change. And I thank Brian for getting that video to us, because it definitely opened up my line of sight of my take on it. So
yeah, and it's actually has bled to sports. So and I know you're gonna touch on sports, right, Brian?
Yeah, I am. I do want to talk a little real quick. Yeah, I know you guys have touched on a lot of the major points I wanted to, so I'm not going to try to reiterate the same thing. But for me, it definitely changed my view. And the one thing I do want to bring up is because on the last episode, I did make a very strong point against the violence, the looting, and those things that were going on in the protests. And the one thing that this video helped me do was maybe to not agree with it, but to at least understand it. The part of the video when he talked about him going through the park and screaming out, "On your left, on your left, on your left," it was one of the most perfectly articulated examples of what's going on in this country right now. And the people who are sitting there and are trying to turn this from what the meaning of the protests are to something negative and horrible and everything else, which, I'm not going to sit there and say maybe sometimes I didn't view that the same way. He made me understand that, at some point there's going to be a collision. And if you don't want to stand up and listen when we're out there doing it peacefully, and I don't mean me, when I say that, I meant the people out there in the protests, that they're out there doing it peacefully for so long, what do we expect's going to happen? You can only be peaceful for so long before there's a collision. And it's not like, how long can you go with the voice getting louder and louder and louder? And I think it was very impactful to me to see some of the things he said. And you guys, I hope, sat through that video and watched it, that I'm not going to go into all of it. But in that exact topic, it brings me back to sports. Those of you who don't know who Emmanuel Acho is, real quick, he was an NFL football player. He spent several years as a linebacker in the NFL. And so when I transition into the NFL and how it can play a part in our society, and hopefully for a manner of good, this is one of the steps that it takes. But the thing is, there was somebody 4 years ago who tried to do this before him, but in a different manner. And his voice was silenced, it was shunned, and it was sent away in Colin Kaepernick. He tried to peacefully take a knee in regards to the exact topic that we're talking about today, was social injustice, right? Starting with police brutality, right? And he peacefully was told by a Green Beret that if you want to do something, take a knee, stand up. Don't, and he went ahead and he took his advice and he did that. And he was destroyed by the media. He was destroyed by the NFL. He was destroyed by the president. He was destroyed by Americans, to the point that he's never played a single game or been allowed in the whole brotherhood of that congregation in the NFL since then. And then Drew Brees comes out and says the exact same thing that he said 4 years ago. He doesn't stand for it. He doesn't believe in it. He sees the flag as a sign of our military. And yet nobody stopped to say that maybe Colin Kaepernick doesn't. And people rip Drew Brees for that statement, to the point that his one of his close friends on the team, Michael Thomas, got together with one of the media people in the NFL, and they made a video requesting the NFL to speak out against these injustices, to the point that the NFL and Roger Goodell gave the video back saying, we handled this wrong. We made mistakes. They wouldn't say names. They're not going to. We expect that, right? But they stood back out and they voiced an opinion. And as early as this morning or last night, I don't know when it was, President Trump fired back at the NFL. And, you know, it just brings up to light how different things are from 4 years ago, but how they need to be, how we need to change our view. Because I was one for a long time that thought this was a sign of our military. But it's not to everybody. And I talked about it a little bit last week in my own platform. And this is something that it's about what we're trying to make it, which is a symbol of peaceful protest to try to make a change in order to not get to the point of the violence. So I'm just curious if you guys had heard anything about it, what your views are on it, and what you guys think.
Yeah, I'll chime in real quick. Oh, go ahead, go ahead. You're good. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'll just make mine quick. But yeah, so I mean, I think Kaepernick. I think it all comes down, just like us watching that video and understanding. It comes down to every American taking a step back and trying to understand, right? You know, Kaepernick wasn't trying to disrespect the flag, disrespect our military, disrespect the president. He wasn't trying to do all that. He was trying to take a stand on what he believed in. And now we're talking about years later, we're like, you know what? We understand now. And it's crazy that we live in a world. It took almost 4 years to understand that, right? And we're still taking years, hundreds, thousands of years to still understand it. And you know, at the end of the day, it really comes down to us as individuals. Are we going to make the difference in the world? Are those police officers, you know, are going to make the difference in the world? You know, Trump, and I'm not going to get too much into politics because I don't like speaking about that. But, you know, Trump's going to always have his opinion. Trump, he's going to say what he wants to say because he's always right at the end of the day. But I mean, as the president of the United States, when we talk about America, right, the land of the free, right, the land of opportunity, the greatest country in the world, and we have so many asterisks across from it, I don't feel like we can say that, right? I think there's too much bad going on in the world, and that we're just ignoring it, or the people are getting acquitted, or we're trying to hide it under the rug. That, you know, at some point in time, something has to happen. You know, something has to happen. So that's just my quick take on it. I'll let Gordo go because I didn't mean to cut him off.
No, you're fine. And I do. How do I say this? I do agree with you. It has taken some time, but this needs to stop. I am forward with whatever's happening out there with the protest. I am all for it, but the rioting and stuff like that, I do understand your point of view. It's like, we built this country out of slaves. The slaves should be the ones to take it from you. But that the whole rioting, breaking down buildings, stuff like that, that is something that we need to stop. We need to be more civil about it. Also, those small businesses, like, people built those with their sweat, tears, and blood. Like, please don't destroy those people. Like, they actually work hard for that. So let's try to be more sensitive to those people. So I saw some post where a woman had to put a poster on her window saying, "I'm a single mom. This is all I have. Please don't destroy it." And that hits hard because there's a lot of single parents out there that's all they have. That's all they built. And if you destroy it, that's it for them. How they going to be able to feed their children, their family? It's just super hard. But I am forward with this movement of Black Lives Matter because it does. It doesn't mean that we are the only one that matters, but we need the help right now because Black lives are being targeted for no reason, just because of the tone of our skin. And it is very, very painful. Like this past couple weeks, it's just been nothing but bad and bad news for us, and we need to stand.
Can I say something real quick? Because you brought up a point that I wanted to bring up about the video that I forgot. Real quick, that's another thing that this video brought to light to me that I am guilty of, and I made a conscious effort to change. I would post on my Twitter account a lot before this video that all lives matter, not understanding, I think, truly what that phrase meant. And now after hearing him explain it and the way he articulated, I use that word again because he was just very good at explaining things, at least in a way that I can understand, that, yeah, we get it. All lives matter. But that's not what this movement's about. It's about Black lives. Because at the end of the day, that's where the injustice comes from. And I think that everybody who wants to use the hashtag all lives matter is being naive to what this movement's supposed to be about. And I've made a vow that I'm no longer going to make posts with all lives matter, because I think that's an oxymoron. We understand, and he said it himself, like, nobody's trying to say that your life doesn't matter. Nobody's not trying to say that I didn't, for instance, have a tough childhood, that I came up with a lot of issues in my life and personal roadblocks and things I had to overcome. But he said it very well when he's like, but I will never understand what it's like to have to overcome things just because of the color of my skin. And that's the point of Black Lives Matter, is that you're trying to, that these people have to understand it's about these people just being looked at and being judged from a split second. People had to get to, I can walk into a room and mask my religion and different things where these people can't mask anything. Right. And when you just brought up that hashtag, it sparked that to me about that video. And it's very moving because I make a pledge. I don't want to use all lives matter anymore.
Yeah. So,
and I appreciate that. I appreciate it on your behalf for doing that. Because it does mean a lot for us. It's like all lives matters, yes. But at the moment, this movement is Black Lives Matters, because like you said and the video said, those are the lives that are being targeted the most right now.
Yeah. So let me touch on what Nelson and Brian talked about on the Kaepernick kneeling. At the time, I was like, I knew what the movement was about, so I was one of the ones agreeing with Kaepernick on it. But recently, I was listening to a podcast. Shout out to Los Compadres. Let me say that correctly. Los Compadres podcast. Shout out to them. To Caesar, Marcos, and Jay on it. And it was a good point that was brought up about the kneeling that I never thought about it in this way. He said he mentioned something about the Vietnam guy. No, not the Vietnam. The Navy guy that he spoke to before he did the kneeling.
The Green Beret, I think it was.
The Green Beret guy that he spoke to about before kneeling. But think about this: when you back in the days, when you met a king, you bowed, you kneeled. That's when you met a king, right? So kneeling on the flag, you're not devaluing the flag. You're actually still standing underneath it, and you're showing it actually more respect. Because yes, you're telling the flag, you're above me. I am beneath you still. Right? So I don't know how that got flipped into, he's going against our military people. So it's just, what happened is he was making a statement. He was making a movement. And they just wanted it, nip it immediately and flip it. Like, look at this. It has to do with our military and this and that. And then to stand on top of that, we have a leader that says, "Yeah, get those son of a bitches out of the field." To say something like that and over again, he's just, the way he chooses his words and what he says is so ridiculous. And then his timing on everything and the fact that he can get away with it and nobody says anything. Nobody, and I'm pretty sure he is surrounded by like a bunch of intelligent people. And nobody's telling him, and I understand you can't control him. I understand you can't control what he's going to say, but does anybody tell him, hey, you need to tone it down, that you need to do this. You're the leader of this country. No. the fact that he gets away with it and nobody says anything. He'll say when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Come on, it's not the time for that.
Yep.
It's not time for
We're
that.
at the time of need. We're at the time of need.
Well, I got two things to say towards that. And
go ahead.
so first on the most recent thing you said about the Trump thing, you could be right. And I don't know this for a fact. It's hard for me to believe nobody's telling him not to do it. I just think he doesn't care. That's just my personal belief. And I'm not going to get into detail with that. The other part, though, that I am more curious about was I do understand your point of view about the way that we honored people, right? But the whole reason I think it got brought up is regardless of how we honored people in the past, that has never been the way the flag was to be honored. Anywhere you go, it's all rise, please take off your cap, put your hand over your heart. And so because that became the standard, now I agree with you. There's nothing wrong with what he did because of what his voice was, right? But I think that's why people try to use as villainizing him, because it doesn't matter how we address different things in the past. How do we address that one item, right? That item's always been addressed this way. So once you change it, he was being villainized for changing it. And I think that's where it came from.
They were just trying to shut him down.
Yeah.
Well, they were trying to use him as an example.
I think a lot of it has to do, though.
What's going to happen?
And this is the problem. I think a lot of it had to do, which is what's different today than 4 years ago. I don't even think it was about the flag. In my personal opinion, it was about them trying to silence on a public platform where nobody else was bringing to light the social injustice. They were trying to shut it down, which is one of the things that I think is important that listen, we talk in production meetings, and this was originally, and like I say, I'm learning as I go. Last week, when we got done with our meeting, there was a discussion whether we should continue this topic or not. And I'll be honest, at that moment, I wasn't 100% for it. I thought this should be something that can help people get away from their seriousness in their lives. And I was kind of leaning towards, let's keep things a little bit more light. But as I kept on listening to things throughout the week, I kept on trying to educate myself. After having that conversation with one of the people I look up to who's a mentor to me, the one thing that kept on resonating to me, which is why I'm glad this is a 4-person show, because if I did this, for instance, on my own, this never would be able to come out, that everybody on this show reminded me that what we can't do is let the topic die. Not anymore. We have to keep this topic at the forefront of our conversation. This needs to be brought up, and it may not need to be talked about in a full episode every week, but every couple of weeks it needs to be brought up. Every month it needs to be brought up. This can't be something that we let subside like we have in the past, because if we want to help to do our part to enact change, which is what we're trying to do here, it's got to be discussed. It's got to be talked about, and not just one half an episode.
Yeah. So one
of the things.
Absolutely right.
Go ahead, because what I was going to say is one of the thing is now let's talk about the movement. We're talking about the injustice. Now we can focus the second half of the show before Nelson. You're gonna make a statement right now.
Yeah.
After you finish your statement, we're gonna start focusing on the movement, right? So I think right after Nelson's statement, we'll start moving towards getting in the look what the movement's doing, the consistency of the protest without any violence, which is going on and all that. So I think.
But I'm interested to hear from you, Mezia, is what you wanted to talk about earlier. For you, where was the first time this stood out to you, this injustice? Because I know you had brought up earlier.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I want to hear a little bit from you. Where did that injustice? Where's the first time you remember seeing it?
Nelson,
you want to go before I start?
Yeah. So I definitely agree, going back to the Kaepernick and trying to silence it. I think I completely agree. I don't think it was anything about the flag and our military. I think they wanted to. I think somebody of that caliber, somebody with that platform. We're talking about the NFL, right? We're talking about live stream Sunday night, Monday night football, where everybody's watching. I mean, there's hundreds and millions of people watching football. Many Kaepernick fans. I think they just wanted to nip that in the butt, make him look like a villain, because they didn't want that to escalate to where it is now. I mean, think about it now, right? we people looked at him as a villain, right? This guy is kneeling, he's disrespecting our country. Now he's looking like, man, he's the forerunner for this. He's the foundation. Yep. He decided to take a stand for it, and now we got these protests. And I'm gonna head to
lost his job for it.
Yep. And I'm gonna lead this right into you, Lewis.
But hold on, because you make one great point I do want to touch on, and I'll let you go again, because you just brought this to light, which I think is amazing. You know, one of the big differences with the NFL between 4 years ago and now? 4 years ago, Trump just got in power, and there's a lot of people involved in the NFL that are very close personal friends of Trump. 4 years later,
10 of the owners are
there.
Trump
you go.
supporters.
And guess what? 4 years later, they realized Trump could be on his way out. There has to be something to that, and that's all I gotta say.
Yeah, that could be true too.
You know what? We'll do a segment of where you run into the NFL stadiums and you get quotes from the GMs and stuff. Like Brian's just sneaking in.
But go ahead.
Yeah, and I think the silence has been too long, and now we're getting here, and now we're not being silent anymore, and now we're looking as Kaepernick as that foundation. We're seeing these protests, we're seeing these movements, and I mean, all these incidents are still continue to happen. I mean, even when people are peacefully protesting, you see these videos of people getting pushed on the ground, tear gas, shot with rubber bullets, and they're peacefully protesting. And it's not even stopping. And, and it goes back to Trump. You start looting, we start shooting. But what about the people that are not looting? We're still shooting at them. We're still causing harm to them. And all I'm doing is I'm holding up a sign. I'm not bothering you. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to voice my opinion. And yet you're trying to shut my opinion down. And that's one of the amendments, right? We have the right of freedom of speech. We have that. And we're trying to silence our people.
We have the right to assemble.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And in my opinion, I feel that, there's a lot of good still happening, right? I see these videos where the chief officers are coming out and they're saying, hey, I want to thank you guys for peacefully protesting. I see other videos of police officers taking a knee with the protesters. So there's a lot of still good things happening, but we're not there yet. And I don't think we're going to be there yet. But I think with these movements that I'll let Lewis talk about, from generations from back then and today of what started it for him, I think we're going to get there. It's going to take time, but it's going to take change. And, unfortunately, with the way the, government is, changes might take a while. But I think we need to stop silencing voices and start letting them talk, start hearing to them. Because, it's all good and dandy when you're in the White House protected by soldiers and in a fortress and your bunker.
Secret Service.
Secret Service is all fine and dandy until you're in the streets, until you're with those people, feeling their pain, seeing their pain, living their stories. I'm not African or American, so I can't say that I feel what you guys are going through, but I see it and I have a sense of emotion. I have a sense of feeling to understand this isn't right.
Black Lives Matter is not only just about African Americans.
No.
Black Lives Matter is about all the minorities. So they're making a stand for all of us.
No, which is fine.
And think about that. Think about that message in itself. Your race is the one being abused, and murdered and all that, and they still get up and say, "You're not gonna do this to me or anybody that you feel is beneath you." So think about that.
Yeah,
Black Lives Matter is not only about African Americans. It's all about minorities, anybody that gets abused, and anybody that's going through some shit. So that also takes courage. It's not only about us. It's about what you're doing to everybody that you feel you're above.
Yeah.
So that speaks volumes to me also.
No, I completely agree. But I'm saying in this case, I've been fortunate. I grew up in the Bronx, New York. I grew up in the projects. I understand that lifestyle. I've lived through events and things like that. But I personally haven't been a victim of it. So I can't truly speak on it. So all I'm saying is that I definitely agree with their movement. I hope they continue, and I want their voices to be heard. Me being a Hispanic. I'm on their side. Though nothing's happened to me, I'm still on their side. And me looking out to end, I understand it. I feel it. I'll never, let's say never, but, you know, at the end of the day, I haven't been in those instances to feel their true, full pain. So I definitely support the movement, and I hope they continue to voice their opinion. So go ahead, Lewis.
Well, real quick, because it ties.
By the way,
it's
it's Messiah.
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 Before the
Dang
Messiah
it.
says, because it's a direct tie-in. This is, you know, because we're about to talk about generations, and I had a request from my father to mention that because he was born in 1939, and in the 50s and 60s when things were getting really bad, there were riots in New Jersey where he lived in Plainfield. My dad was caught in those riots. Unfortunately, he was injured, not life-threatening or anything, because obviously I wouldn't be here if that was the case. But he was the person who kind of taught me to try to be more open-minded to things, because even after all that, he understood that it necessarily wasn't directed towards him personally. And after the things that had happened to him during those times, he still always gave me a positive outlook about the people I associate myself with. He always, you know, was there to support me, whoever I chose to date or befriend or everything else. So it's just amazing because I know, and Lewis, I want you to jump in. This was in the 50s and 60s. And then you just mentioned it earlier, 91. Tell us what you want to talk about.
So before I want to go back to before 91.
Before
right?
the dinosaurs?
Yeah, so I want to go back to before 91. So grew up in the projects in Boston. I've seen all kinds of shit. Like literally seen all kinds of shit. I grew up hating cops because of the shit I've seen in the streets in the city of Boston. Mind you, if you guys don't know, the city of Boston, Massachusetts, is one of the racist cities ever. It was the last to get a black player in the Red Sox through while every other team has done it. So one of the racist cities in this nation is Boston. At least northeast, what I've experienced. I know it gets worse when you get south.
I experienced it too.
I don't know about all of the north. Well, in the northeast, you mean?
Yes, in the northeast.
Can I say one quick thing?
There's
Can I
a
say
lot
one
of
quick
bad things
thing?
about Boston, but
Can I say one quick thing to your Boston?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to like,
yeah.
So Torrey Hunter, you know, the baseball player, he actually had every team he signed with, he had a no trade clause for Boston because of the level of racism that occurred there. And I'll let you continue, but I just want to throw that in there. Like even a professional baseball player didn't want to go there. An African American baseball player didn't want to go there because of that reason.
Yeah. So I've seen a lot of shit, a lot of police brutality. I've seen a lot. So I grew up hating cops all the way up to I was to a point when I became a teenager and I was able to drive. Well, at that time I was a scrub. So you know, a scrub, according to TLC, is a guy that's on the passenger. So when I was a passenger.
I thought it was a guy who gets no love, but.
I was a passenger in my boy's car, and we used to always get targeted, right? We used to always get targeted because he had the low rider and we were young, driving around and all that. So, and we would always get stopped, no fucking reason. We're in a bad neighborhood, but everywhere in our city was bad. So, at this time, at this time we're in Lawrence, Massachusetts. We get stopped. I would be the guy to say, "Why the hell? Why are you stopping us?" Because I thought I was smart, right? When I was young, right? And he's like, "Are you driving?" I'm like, "No, shut the fuck up." And I'm like, "But why are you stopping us?" I would try to be that badass. And the cop would be like, "You want to get arrested?" And that's when I shut up. But I was still like, it's some fucked up shit, right? I've been also handcuffed and put on a curve for, I can't say for no apparent reason, but still like being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I get caught. You know, in the city where I grew up, people like to hang around blocks. Yeah, whether good blocks or bad blocks, you know, not everybody that hangs in the block does what the block does. I just, you know, those are our friends. We don't choose our friends, right? Well, actually we do, but those are just people we hang around because we have fun with. But so one cop happened to be a retired cop. He ran the police athletic league. If for most of those that don't know, police athletic league is actually, you know, funded by the government. I think they're a nonprofit or something like that. And, you know, it's to keep the, you know, inner city kids out of trouble, and they open up basketball courts in the middle of the night. We used to call them midnight ball. So we'll play all the way to 11 or midnight.
Yeah,
And
we
it
used to
opens at
have that.
7. Yeah, so and that's one thing we used to love, playing basketball. So what do? They open up gyms in certain parts of the city and you play. So Mr. Benjamin, shout out to him. He was a retired cop with a lot of respect in the city, and he taught me a lot. He taught me that, hey, not all of us are the same. He actually also was one of the key role players of me graduating high school. He's seen that you're a smart kid. Go finish. You want better than this. You want to get out of here, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he would advise me. So it took all the way to high school, almost actually my freshman year is when I met him. It took to that for me to say not all cops are bad. That guy, right? That made me open up my eyes because I've seen a lot of shit. I've seen cops just beat a person. Mind you, obviously they're there because there's a fight in the middle of the street. So the cops get called and all that. So they're there to break up the fight. But then all of a sudden that fight, that break up a fight becomes they're arresting almost everybody in the block. I'm like, why don't you just arrest the 2 people that were fighting? No, they wanted to arrest everybody in the block, and everything gets rowdy, so more backup comes, and it becomes more worse than what it is. So those are my experience with the cops. Now, my big major experience is at the news, the Rodney King beating. That was a big moment, like for me. I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. And I was in LA, and all hell broke loose in LA. Because he was speeding, driving drunk, and he was trying to get away from them. At that time, he was trying to get away with it because I believe he had a warrant, so he was scared. He was driving under the influence, scared, it took off. But then after they arrested him, they took him out of his car, they beat this guy down, beat him, broke his arm, I believe, fractured his skull. And luckily, there was a guy with a recorder and recorded everything. And then those guys...
Social media before social media.
Before social media, before all that, so he must have had one of those big ass, we call them Channel 5 cameras, but they're just big VHS cameras, and all that. And, 2 of the officers were arrested. They were charged, but the others weren't. But LA, all hell broke loose in LA. And that's why Tupac says it in one of his songs. We'll burn this motherfucker down if we have to.
It makes sense.
And it's it's just the injustice. Like Laquan McDonald, they try to say that he was charging at them with a knife. Mind you, the kid was just walking around. Yes, I think he took a shortcut through trailers, through a company where they have trailers and all that. So the cop seen him and started following him, and the cop is following. You see the footage. There's actually a whole special on it on Showtime. It's called 16 Shots, a whole documentary on it. Mm-hmm. And you see the footage because now they release every footage. You see the footage. He's walking away, and the cop is just following him, right? Then you see him running, and then he takes off, and then he has a knife in his hands, but at that point, think about all the shit that happened. Like, if I was young and I seen all the cops do all this fucked up shit, imagine him living in a bigger city like Chicago, where he probably seen a lot worse from cops, and they get away with it. So I don't know where he got the knife. I don't know that much detail. I don't want to get too much into no details. But the fact that the cop tried to cover it up and say that he charged them, and that's why they shot him. And then when they released the footage, a year, 13 months later, they released the footage. All hell broke loose because they try to cover it up.
Well, the one thing
I think that's where they fucked up. They fuck up is where police are a man. They're an army. They're a gang. They protect each other. But to what point do you, the human side of you, says, "Wait a minute, that guy can't breathe. Get off him." Right? He's already handcuffed. He's on the floor. He can't do anything to you. Get off him. When does somebody say that?
Yep.
Or do you just watch I mean, I don't know about you guys, but growing up, I used to hate bullies. Growing up, I couldn't see people jump one person. I would have to say something about it, and I'll end up fighting. Because I was, what the hell is going on? What's this? The abuse is going on, right? Yep. So I don't know how cops or people can see shit happen and not say anything. What, were they afraid that the guy's going to say something?
See, you brought up two things, and we'll start with the most recent one, right? Okay. So there's, and I know it's not the same, right? But when you put yourselves in certain team environments, and the police force, the military, understand what I'm saying? There's a certain level of team environment with that, right? And I know it's to an nth degree, right? You now in the military, in police, and those types of things, you rely on that person literally to protect your life. So understand what I'm saying, and I'm not saying this is right, but I'm just saying that I think this is where sometimes the mentality comes from as to why they don't stand up. If you are the person who stops this individual from doing the things they do you now feel safe in an environment with the people you work with who are supposed to protect your life, who are supposed to have your back? Because if something does break out, are they going to be there for you to count on them? Now, real quick, before you respond to that, I just got one other quick thing to say, because you make a lot of good points in everything you've said. I think the one thing that I'm not a fan of social media. I'm not an advocate of it. I think it's put a lot of detriment to the youth, to the people growing up, and I think it's hurting society in a major way because it's taken us away from interacting with human beings and puts us too much on devices and relying on that. But this is the one area of social media that has been a huge benefit to our society, because for so long, these injustices, because you said it, Lewis, they were not seen. Rodney King, if it was not seen, never would have been brought up to the light that we made it out to be. If George Floyd, if all these people whose videos have come out have not been seen, these injustices never would have been able to been fought for. And this is what I'm glad social media is there. This is where these smartphones, these cameras have made an impact in society, finally in a positive way, because this is why we're talking about it. Because without those videos, we would be silent.
Well, think about this. And this is where it hurts most. In the past, I've always said, did he initiate? He was a resistant arrest. He was doing this. Or look how aggressive he is. They have to what do you call it? What's the word? Not arrest.
Subdue.
They have to subdue him. So they have to do this. They have to do that. George Floyd did none of that. None of that. And you see footages of different angles of him when they handcuff him and they're sitting down on the floor and he's complying to everything. And then they pick him up from the floor and then they take him towards his car, and then all of a sudden they ended up putting him on the floor, and he did everything right. Everything that the officer must have been asking him. Mind you, we can't see what's going on. We can't hear what they're saying, but body language also tells you a lot.
Oh yeah.
And he's complying to everything, and he still lost his life.
And also social media was trying to play it off as like, he was drugged. He had this substance in his blood. That's why he couldn't breathe. Like social media, the news, try to cover it up some other way, try to defend them.
Well, that's a different form of social media than what I was talking about. You're not wrong. When I say social media, what I mean is the fact that we have, because Lewis brought up the fact that was very impactful when he said it to me, was the guy literally standing there with a freaking 3-ton camera filming Rodney King versus the guy that can pull out his phone and in 10 seconds film the true injustice that's happening in front of them, to help to bring it to light. Now, this is where the social media is bad, right? Because you got people spin it every way. But the good thing is that the technology that we live in that I usually hate is why I think we are able to have these discussions today, why we're having them. And man, if there wasn't for video phones, think about it. We may not still bring to light all the tragedies that are happening, because we may, number one, never hear about them, or number two, exactly like you guys just said, you guys hit the nail on the head. He was attacking me. He was the aggressor. I had to subdue him with certain levels of force that I was taught in my profession. But now there's evidence to prove the contrary. And think about the countless number of lives that have been lost in this country over the last 100 years, that those are the stories being told. One of the stories, there's the talk about the boy who was sentenced to death, a 14-year-old African American boy, because a woman claimed.
No, that was Tillman. I think Tillman was the one who got hung.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But, so it
was two women. Two women accused him of rape or something.
Oh no! Maybe I don't know if it's the same exact one then, but accused him of making passes at her, where two white men took it upon themselves to murder him, and they got away with it. And 54 years later, she admitted that she lied about it, and they admitted that they didn't care, because they knew 54 years later they could not be charged with the same crime, correct, twice.
Yep.
But what if then we would have had phone cameras. We would have had the ability to film and see the truth of what happened. That's the one thing that we are a little bit lucky on, is because we can bring to light the truth of what's really going on in America.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just a quick thing.
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off. Same thing happened with Trayvon. They said that the George Zimmerman, the guy that killed him, he was injured, so he did it on self-defense. It's like, wow. How?
Yeah, thanks to that lady, that person that was recording from inside the house, that showed differently.
Yep,
there was footage from the
inside. Great example.
Took him a year later and over 2 million signatures recollected in order for him to be prosecuted. Like, it take over a year, and over 2 million people sign a document for this person to get prosecuted.
Yeah.
It's like,
so
come on.
I'm gonna just piggyback right off you. So, and I'm gonna start off with Brian and Lewis. So you're talking about social media. I think Will Smith, Messiah, and Sheck Monster. Oh my lord.
Listen, on another broadcast, I will get on you. I didn't, this one is what it is.
Go ahead.
It's okay. Jeff's gonna get on me. Don't worry about it. Anyways, as I was saying, I think Will Smith said it best, and I'm not quoting word for word, but it's pretty similar. He said racism hasn't ended; it's just being recorded. And
you said that last show too, and that was a great quote.
Yeah. And I just want to bring it up again, and I just think that I think in this day and age, I'm thankful for the technology that we have, because we're able to contribute, and this all starts with people. Are they going? If someone's recording, are they going to use it for the good? Right? Are they gonna manipulate it or use it for the good? When I think about and going back to what the Gordo said, he said it took 2 years? To get him.
Year.
Yeah,
Almost,
so over a year.
Over 16 months.
Yep, and that goes back to someone I'm gonna bring up real quick, just Ahmaud Arbery, the guy who was jogging. He was jogging.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, and when these two white males decide to confront him in a pickup truck and make a citizen's arrest, because obviously they think he was robbery or whatever.
There's been a couple of
break-ins
around the neighborhood. Yeah,
and this man is jogging, and this guy shoots him. Right, because obviously trying to defend for his life. Right, you got two males trying to arrest me or do anything. You're not a cop, and you're trying to arrest me for, the wrong reason. I didn't do anything, and
so he's trying to fight for his life.
Yeah, and it took 3 months. 3 months to arrest these guys. It took protests.
They wasn't gonna get away with it.
They were.
It took protests. Yeah.
Yes, it took protests, and there was a video captured. That was able to show the instance. And I think that if it wasn't for that video, primarily, and if it wasn't for those protests, those guys would have got away with it. And it's sad to say, we live in this society, we live in this world, because I'm a gun owner, right? Where you can go to a gun class and they say, shoot to kill. Because in court, if they can't hear the other half of the story, there's no story.
Yep.
That they even
Yeah,
teach
that
that.
is.
Yep.
But
Right?
that story reminds me of the one
that's on
that
the first class. That's on the first class too.
that story goes back to what in the beginning of this episode with the video, what Acho said, right? And how there was a African American man asking a white woman to obey the law and leash her dog. The law. He's just asking her to obey the law. And he had a fear for his life because she could use that power of skin color against him for asking her to obey the law. And that's the same, like, that's how crazy we are in this country. That we can't hold other people accountable or ask politely even to do the things that they would that we expect normal human beings to do. I just don't get it.
And she just used 2 words to get the cops to get there.
Yeah.
2 words.
And they got there fast.
There's this black
boys.
guy, and he's threatening me.
They got there fast.
Like,
and you know,
and he's just there bird watching.
that's it.
Bird
And
watcher.
it's crazy that there's still people in this world that feel entitled. Like, no, I could break the law. I'm white. I'm gonna get away with it. No.
Speaking of that, I think that's something next week we'll talk about. Karens and what does it mean?
Yes.
Since he brought that up, I just decided to throw that in because I know I'll forget.
That's Brian's girlfriend. That's Brian's girlfriend. I just wanted to make everybody laugh real quick. But you know, going back to and we're talking about social injustice, but we're also talking about that the police brutality and stuff like that. You know, and me going back, I'm gonna just revert back to Breonna Taylor. I mean, these guys on a hunch, on a warrant, because apparently she was receiving packages of drugs, broke into this woman's house and shot her 8 times, okay? 8 times. And these officers are not charged. I mean, the FBI said they're going to open an investigation on the 22nd of May. That's when they did that. But think about that. How is it okay for an officer to mistakenly... I mean, it's still not. It's not okay to mistakenly arrest somebody, but now you mistakenly killed somebody.
Well, the reason why they shot is because I'm not justifying anything, but I think her husband or her boyfriend reached for a gun. But I would do the same thing if somebody's breaking into my house. You don't expect anybody. All you hear is the door breaking.
Yeah,
you're gonna reach for your gun.
Yeah, but
somebody's breaking into your house because you have
true.
no idea what's going on. So you got to reach. You're gonna defend your family. You're gonna defend your castle.
Yes, but from the news of the thing, he called 911 before firing, and it was a licensed firearm. So you're breaking into my home. I don't know who you are.
Yep.
So he had every right to shoot.
Exactly.
Right? He had every right to shoot. But it's still not okay for you. Like we fund so much money to our police departments, into our military, for you to, I mean, people make mistakes, but you just cost somebody's life, right? And all it could have took was maybe another hour, 2 hours of research, maybe another day or two of investigation, surveillance, right? Mm-hmm. We're out here, these people are wearing $1,000 worth of riot gear, but we did $500 worth of research and murdered the wrong woman?
I guess my question would be, and I don't know enough about the story, is he reached for the gun. What'd she reach for?
She didn't reach for anything.
I don't know that much. I don't know that much of the story.
But that's what I'm saying, though, is I don't get the impression that she posed any threat to their lives. Because the argument's always going to be he, the boyfriend, husband, whoever it was, posed a threat to their life. And in that position... whether you agree with it or not, I'm not trying to say my opinion on it. I'm just stating facts. They have a right to defend themselves. But as an officer of the law, they're also supposed to take extreme caution and use that as a complete last resort. So if she doesn't pose a threat to their life, if there's no clear sign of a weapon, they are not authorized to be allowed to open fire upon her.
Well, let me ask you this. Do officers train to shoot?
Yes.
Do they go to train? Why does it take 8 shots to kill one person?
Because they're trained to. Because the one thing once again, I'm not an expert, right? But the impression
Yeah.
I've always gotten from people that I know from cops, you're trained not to shoot, and you're supposed to be. Okay, now understand certain
It's easier
circumstances.
said than done, right? Yeah.
I'm not saying that. But obviously, because of racism and everything else, that's not always the case. But you are trained to use as a last resort. So the way that they are trained is once you pull the trigger once, you do not stop until you know they're done. Because you are supposed to, that's my point. You're never supposed to unleash your firearm and fire it until it's the absolute last resort to save your life, which is the problem we're having, that's not the case in the majority of these injustices across America.
Yep.
But once you do fire it, you better not stop until you know that perpetrator's down. Because once you've unleashed it, you have to be sure that you are now protected. Because if you fire one shot, well, naturally that person's going to fire back. But if you fire 8 shots, they can't fire back. You know what I mean? Like you get what I'm saying?
And the crazy thing is the one, which is Breonna Taylor, who didn't pose a threat, died. But her boyfriend that did, because obviously he grabbed his licensed firearm, still living.
But licensed or not, like I say, I can understand him being, but I can't guarantee anything. But from what I've heard from it, it did not sound like she ever posed a threat to their life. That they're not trained to take that offense against her. Like
I know.
Each perpetrator is viewed differently, which goes back to the knife, right? And the different things. I'm sorry, if you have a gun and he has a knife, how is that a threat to your life? It's not.
Unless he knows how to throw it.
If you're an officer of the law, unless you're getting hit between the eyes.
I've watched Expendables. I've seen it.
Oh, here we go. All right.
I'm just saying.
All right, so we're gonna end it on. Well, we're not gonna end it on a note. First of all, we need to do, because we're already at the hour, which is good. Another thing is, real quick. Another thing is, last week, some of our viewers thought the episode was they enjoyed the episode so much they thought it was short. So today we decided to make it an hour to see, because it's a great topic.
Well, it's actually be like an hour and 10 with the video.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's gonna, the topic is a great topic. The movement is good. I believe there's changes. It's good. There should be changes happening right now. And sometime in the future, I just hope it gets better. And we learn from this finally, but it's gonna take some time. It's gonna take some time to to pick up on that. But I believe that this protest is.
Gordon, I want to let you get gold though. I want to let you get last word. So I just want to say one thing, so you can have the last word of the day. Is what you said, Lewis, is true. But the one thing that I want to reiterate that we talked about earlier is this message can't stop. Things aren't going to change unless we continue to speak our voice out. And I know that we don't have a huge platform, but I know that we've talked about it, and I'm very proud to be a part of this channel and this show, because they've allowed for these opportunities for me to be able to find ways of changing and viewing things in a different way, and not holding it against me when I change my views from one week to another. But we promise and we vow that this will not be the last time you hear about it. We may not talk about it next week. We may not talk about it the week after. But we vow that this conversation will be had, and we will continue this conversation until we see change enacted.
Yeah, there's some case coming. So we're going to talk about the case if it was justice or no justice done. We're going to talk about that.
Yep, definitely.
Because the whole world is watching, bro. This movement's gone worldwide, bro.
The largest movement.
Yep.
Go ahead, Gordo.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say is a special hug to those families of Laquan McDonald's, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, Eric Gardner. A special hug to you guys. My condolences to you families. My brothers, my sisters, I love you. We're with you. Be safe, stay strong. The movement will keep on going. And with that, we're going to leave you guys on that note. Like we
what
said,
Nelson needs to do sneaker of the day.
Before we leave, McNutty's going to do sneaker of the day.
I wish we would have done sneaker the day before that, because that was a
I know. Yeah. All right, I'll end it. All right, I'll say something myself too to end it after sneaker of the day.
So I'll pass it on to McNutty.
I got you. So sneaker of the day.
That was beautiful, though, Gordo. That was beautiful.
That was beautiful, Gordo.
Not sure you guys can see it.
Look at that.
See it?
If you can't see it,
Is
I don't
that-
know
do
what's
they glow
wrong
in
with
the
your
dark?
eyes because that thing is
Don't
bright.
forget.
Oh, okay, there you go. Is that a little
showing
better?
us.
Is that a little better?
Yeah, forget about showing us on Skype. Show it on the camera.
Yeah, I am. It is on the camera. South Beach.
Okay. Yo, do
South
they glow
Beach.
in the dark?
I don't know. I haven't tried.
Oh, okay.
Hey Google, turn off
Those are-
lights.
What are those?
Whoa.
What are those? What are they called?
These Hey Google, turn on lights. These are
Plug
the
to Google.
South Beach 97s, Air Max 97s.
Oh, nice.
Don Johnson got a pair of those, I think.
I can
Yeah.
see why they call them South Beach. The
Yeah,
colors.
yeah, I know.
Those
So
remind me of those
I-
new Heat jerseys. You know, little Dwayne
Yeah,
Wade
I
action.
see.
I know, bro. I'm gonna go to.
I see.
I got a trip to Puerto Rico coming up with that. That's my outfit. So I'm gonna save those specifically. But I'm gonna end it on this note, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, thank you for tuning in, watching this very special episode of Generation Shock. If you haven't, go ahead and subscribe. If you're already subscribed, we thank you. We thank you. We thank you. And once again, to all
Please
those
comment.
lives lost, any lives lost in general, but specifically with this episode, any lives lost due to injustice, police brutality, social injustice, tragically lost their lives. Our condolences from the Generation Shock family goes out to you. Hugs and kisses, and God bless. So, send the show, guys. Thank you, guys.